Hi everyone, Greg here again with How to Read Music. This is lesson 02, Measuring Distance Intervals. So far we have looked at the staff, which is made of lines and spaces, and when there is a note that is on the line, like this one, it's called a line note, and if it is on the space between the lines, it's called a space note. Now here we have two notes going in succession. This is a note on a line followed by a note that is on the very next space up. So this is the shortest distance that you can have on the staff. This is called a second. Why is it called a second? Well, if you had two of the same note, we would call that a first. Normally we call it a repeated note, but you can think of that as being a first. If you go to the very next spot on the staff, that is a second. And if you go one more than that, you go two spots, that's called a third. So here we have two space notes. It's a repeated note. And here we have a space note going down to the very next spot, to that line. That is a second. And here we have a space note going down to the very next space, going down two spots on the staff. This is a third. Now, like I said, we don't call them firsts, we call them repeated notes. Just so you know, it's often called a unison, that's Latin or something, but we're just going to call them repeated notes. Now, do you notice anything? A second will always go from a space to a line, or a line to a space. So in seconds, the notes are going to be opposites, space to a line or line to a space. Whereas a third goes from a space to a space or a line to a line. So in thirds, the notes are going to be the same. Space and a space, line and a line. They will be the same. They will match. So what is this? This is a second. We're doing some practice here. And this, a second, line to a space. Here we have line to a line. This is a third. Notice there's a line, and there's a space in between, so there is something getting skipped. It's going two spots on the staff. This is a third. This is a second, line to a space. Space to a space. This is a third. See that line in the middle? Line to a space. A second. This is a third. This is a second. This is a third. And a second. And a second. And a third. Oh, okay, well, now we have stems on the notes. Now remember I told you the stems are no big deal at all. You can pretty much ignore them. So this is still a line note going down to a space note. Okay, we just ignore those stems and look just at the note heads. This is a second. And this is a third. Also a third. Space to a line, second. Okay, now we have those notes that are not filled in, they're open, but this is still a line note to a line note, so still a third. Here we have space to a space, and this is a third. Now, what direction is this third going? Remember I said ignore the stems. Now if you were to look too closely at the stems, it looks like these two notes are going up, but it's not the case. Get rid of those stems and you can see that the note heads are showing you that this is a third going down. So just to keep that in mind, this is a second, and this is a ledger line. Remember those? Still not a big deal. Space to a line, still a second. Now, here's something you might run into. Is this a third? No, because it's going not from a space to the very next space. It's going one space further. See that? This is a third. This is bigger than a third. It's actually a fifth. We won't get to fifths for a while yet, but this is a third. And here's another one. Okay, this is not a third. It's going too far. This is a third. It just goes to the very next line to a line. Is this a second? Space to a line, right? So it's a second? No. You have to look more carefully than that. It is space to a line, but it has to go to the very next line. Okay, so space to a line, but not the very next line. See that? So just be careful when you're looking at these. We won't see many fourths and fifths for a while. We're going to stick to the smaller intervals, seconds and thirds. But just so you're aware, that's how those work. Now, a good way to practice this, and I will have some practice sheets put up. Practice is to draw a third, up a third from this space, go to that space, from that line to that line. Also practice going down a third, space to a space, up a second, will be there. And you will find that writing the notes on the staff will make it even easier to read them when you have to read them. So that's all for this lesson. Coming up is note names and the musical alphabet. So I hope to see you there. Thanks. Bye.